This next bit is probably the main reason why you have to take this class. And it looks like this. This is over in the Layers panel. And what we're going to do is we want to, I mentioned working non-destructively. And what that means is I want to make changes to my file and to my layers without damaging the original pixels for whatever reason. I just find that it's easier, it's more convenient to work non-destructively, because then I can go back and put original things back in my image without having to do a lot of surgery. Okay, so what I want to do here is add this thing called a layer mask. And we've talked about it in general, but now we're going to get specific. It's this third one down here at the bottom. It's like a circle inside of a rectangle. I'm going to click on it here, and I have a funny feeling it's going to be backwards, but that's okay. It is backwards. It kept the background, but got rid of her. That's okay. I'm going to undo this, and I will inverse my mask, my selection, Command Shift I. Okay, let's do that again. And now we'll hit the layer mask, and that looks pretty good. Okay, and you'll see that there's a basically an alpha channel, but when it's in this location, it's called a layer mask. Okay, here's what it is. So wherever it's white, which is represented here, this is visible. Wherever it's black, it's invisible. Okay, so the key word that I want you to take away from this whole situation is layer masks are about visibility. The visibility of whether you can see a pixel. Now, if you look over in this layer thumbnail, you can see that the background is still there. It's still intact. All we're doing by using the layer mask is we're telling Photoshop, okay, make this part of the image invisible. Let's keep this visible. Okay? So, well, what does that mean for us? Well, what it means is, notice, by the way, look at this. If I click over here, I can click over here, okay? I can actually work on separate things. So for instance, let's say that I want to make something else visible. Let's say part of the curtain that's back there. Okay, easy to do. I'll get my brush tool. I'll make sure that there's the brackets around here to indicate that it's the part that is selected. And I'm going to, let's see, how big is my brush? I think my brush is a little too small. Make my brush a little bit bigger. Okay, and I'll paint some white here. And you can see that the curtain is back there. And then you can see also that there's a little white spot where I painted between those two images. Okay, white means visibility. Black means invisibility. So I'll go back here and I'll switch this, or I can hit X, either one, right? And I'll paint this out again. And I'm still not harming the original pixels. It's still all good. So I'll just wipe these out. I think I need to make my brush a little bit smaller over here. Kind of take care of this business. Pretty cool, huh? And like I did before, if I hold down the Shift key and click on the layer mask thumbnail, I can turn the background back on completely and leave the mask temporarily turned off. If I click the red X on its own, boom, it's gone again. And there's even more to layer mask, actually. But we have to go back a little bit. Well, let me talk about this. If I click on the layer itself and I paint in here, let's say that I paint white. Okay, first of all, it's invisible. Why? Well, you can actually see it there. It's actually on the real image. Okay, but black is just indicating that that whole area is invisible. Okay, and I'll demonstrate this by holding Shift, and I'll turn this off. There you go. There's the little mark that I made. That's not a good thing to do, by the way, because I'm destroying pixels. I'm messing stuff up. So I'm going to hit Command Option Z a couple times to make this business go away. Command Option Z, Z. There we go. It's gone again. Okay, so it's important that you know what you're doing back over here. If you're worrying about visibility or invisibility, that's going to be in the layer mask. Okay, if you paint on the image, then you're actually destroying pixels. Now we need to go back and make some changes. Let's turn the layer mask back on. And you'll notice that there's kind of a dark halo around her. Okay, this is bad stuff. Okay, this is a dark halo. Depending on what your background is that you're trying to get rid of, you might wind up with a white halo or a light halo, depending on the situation. So we're going to hit Command Option Z a few times. We want to go back to the marching ants for a little bit because the selection that we did was just a little bit too big. Okay, so we'll hit Command Option Z, go back to marching ants at some, there we go. There's our marching ants. And what we're going to do now, of course, since you can paint in your layer mask, I could go through and I could paint out those little halos around everything. But frankly, that's a lot of work. And for this job, I don't need it to be absolutely precise. So what I can do is I can use some of the selection-based tools to make this a little bit easier. Okay, so let's go to the Select menu, and we're going to modify our selections. Okay, number one is that we're going to contract. We're going to make these selections a little smaller. Okay, and this file is actually quite large. If you look down here at the size-wise, this image is like in the neighborhood of 35 megabytes. It's pretty huge. Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to shrink down the pixels, and we'll reduce this by 7. And I'll click OK. And you'll notice now that now you can see like a little bit of her arm there, a little bit of her arm here, a little bit of the fingers there. Basically, we're kind of cutting into her. Okay, let's see what the layer mask looks like just like this. So I'll click on Layer Mask. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. There's a few little dark edges up there that we might play with a brush, but we don't. I mean, it's actually very nice. Okay, in fact, I might just leave it like that. Nah, let's go back. I'm going to undo that. The other thing I want to do is soften the edge, because these are some pretty hard edges on her. We're going to soften this, going to Modify, and we're going to hit Feather. And what this does, well, it's another pixel setting, and what it does is it softens. It's like, you know how when we've made our brush soft or hard using this? Well, I can't get to it right now, hang on. When we go to the hardness value, when we get a soft brush or a hard brush, well, imagine that we're basically applying a very small, soft brush to the edge of this marching ant, kind of, here. By using in Quick Mask, I could essentially draw that or paint that selection so that's a little bit softer on the edge by using a brush. So we can do this by using the Select menu, and we're going to modify this and feather it. Now, the setting for the contract that we did a while ago was 7, and I don't need it quite that large. I'm going to do this for 3.5, 3.5. Now, the changes that you're about to see, you probably won't see it. It's almost imperceptible. But now when I create my layer mask, you should see a softened edge. Just a little bit. It might feel a little bit blurry over there. And that's working out very nice. Now again, I think the only place that's really egregiously bad is maybe this section up here and this section over here. First, let's bring in the background and see what we can do. So we'll go to Arrange and go to, I'll do 2 up horizontal. And yeah, so I'll get the Move tool and drag this up here. Hello. There we go. And I'll go back to this one. Arrange, consolidate all the tabs. Okay, obviously she needs to be in front, so I'll just flip these. I'll drag layer 1 down a bit. Okay, and I will move this one into place. Why does this seem overly large? And we'll leave it like that, fitting nicely in the background. Okay, so now we've set up the layer mask by using the marching ants correctly. We've got the background in there. Now actually, because of the background, we don't quite see the little boo-boos a little earlier that we saw. So I'll turn this off for a minute. And here's the other thing. I kind of want to repeat this because it's really important. Again, it's all about visibility. So I'm going to go get my layer mask. I'm going to go get my brush tool, and I'm going to zoom in. So spacebar command, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit like this. And I will get my brush tool, and I'm going to paint white I'm sorry, I'm going to paint black. I'm going to mask this out. Make sure that my brackets are on the layer mask. And probably make my brush a bit smaller. Oops, where are you going there, Photoshop? Okay, and just paint some invisibility. Let me turn my mask off here so it's a little bit easier to see this. And I can just kind of slowly make these pixels invisible. If I make a little brush a little bit bigger, it should make it kind of soft as well. So it looks a little blurry. I'm going to go back up here because I didn't quite get that. Nice. Okay, how are we looking here? Got to take the edge off there. I think we're okay. Let's go over on this side. Okay, really it starts about here. So this kind of makes the hair a little softer around the edges. And I know that in class and even on videos I've previewed that there's even a better way to select hair and make it look like it really belongs in the image. And that's coming up in chapter 6, I believe. Okay, so that's pretty good on this side. Let's take a look over here. There's like a little section right over there that needs a little attention. So I'll kind of, oops, that's a bit too big. Let's make my brush a little bit smaller. And just soften out the edge there. Cool. And I'm okay with that. There's like one little other area here that kind of needs attention, and that is that business here. I'm going to make my brush really small. And there is one other place that I'm not going to sweat, and that is this shadow space over there. Let's turn the background back on. And I like that. It's indoor lighting on her. That's why I chose an indoor background. And that's how you work with alpha channels as selections, then turning them into layer masks and working with the modify tool, which is not available right now, but it's there, when you have marching ants. So please, it's vitally important that you do understand layer mask. Practice with it. Practice, practice, practice until you start to feel that you can remove a background and still not damage the original. Imagine if you had done something like this for a client, and then they come back, later after you've done a whole lot of processing on your image, and they say, hey, you know what, can you put that original blue curtain back? Well, if you've deleted the pixels, then you have to go back and do a lot of extra processing. If you work non-destructively, all you've got to do is go over here and hit the Shift key and turn it off. Instantly putting the background back in place. And this kind of thing, this kind of request to change where a client changes their mind, happens a lot. So there you go. Layer mask. Dig it.